You ever meet someone who thinks rules were made for everyone but them? That's how this whole story started. One hot afternoon, I found myself standing in my backyard, one hand on a rusted water valve, the other holding a wrench, and on the other side of the hedge, the HOA president, Linda Carson, was screaming like she was trying to stop a missile launch. "You touch that valve, and I swear I'll have you arrested." Her voice cracked through the air like static, sharp and desperate. The funny thing was, the valve wasn't hers. It wasn't even the HOA's. It sat squarely under my land, on my deed, and I knew every inch of it because I helped install it 30 years ago. And if Linda thought she ran this neighborhood, well, she was about to find out who really controlled the flow around here. 3 months earlier, I'd moved into Pine Ridge Estates, a peaceful, gated community, or so the real estate agent promised. I was freshly retired after 35 years with the city waterworks department. I spent half my life crawling through tunnels, balancing pressure grids, repairing main lines nobody else wanted to touch. I figured I'd earn some quiet. Just me, my dog Hank, a modest house, and a patch of lawn to tinker with. The place was tidy, predictable, all beige and symmetry, like someone had pressed copy-paste on every house. What they didn't mention in the brochure was that peace here came at the price of absolute compliance. Enter Linda Carson, the self-appointed queen of Pine Ridge. Mid-50s, hair like a helmet, lipstick 2 shades too red, and a clipboard she probably slept with. She ruled with the precision of a metronome and the warmth of a parking ticket. The first violation letter came before I even unpacked the kitchen boxes. Mailbox exceeds height regulation by 1 inch. Delivered by a teenage security officer wearing a shirt 3 sizes too big. I actually laughed out loud. I trimmed the post myself and thought that was that. 2 days later, I got another. Driveway color inconsistent with approved neutral tone palette. Turns out my garage was painted sand drift instead of almond stone. Apparently, there are 12 shades of beige in this kingdom, and I picked the wrong one. That's when I started realizing what I'd walked into. An HOA masquerading as a community. A week later, Linda showed up in person. I'll never forget it. She marched up my steps with 2 board members in tow like she was leading an audit. "Welcome to Pine Ridge, Mr. Lawson," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Then she looked around like she was grading my existence. "Your garden hose is uncoiled. That's a tripping hazard, section 4.3. I couldn't help myself. "Do you memorize this stuff, or do you have it wired into your brain?" No one laughed, but I did. She didn't like that. You could almost hear her pen scratching my name onto her mental blacklist. And sure enough, 2 days later, another letter arrived. $50 fine for non-compliance with safety protocol. At first, I thought she was just a petty bureaucrat with too much time. But then I noticed something else, my water bill. It had doubled for no reason. I checked every pipe, every sprinkler, every toilet tank. Nothing leaked. Nothing ran. But the numbers didn't add up. So I did what I used to do back at the city. I pulled up the old municipal water maps. Buried deep in the records was a faded notation, an old set of manual water valves running right under my lot. Installed back in the early 90s during a drought control project. They were supposed to be sealed off years ago, but they weren't. That got me curious. I started walking the neighborhood at odd hours, 4 in the morning, flashlight and dog in hand, watching sprinklers. Some lawns were bone dry. Others, especially Linda's, looked like golf course greens. Even in drought season, her hydrangeas bloomed like they were being fed from the fountain of youth. And that koi pond behind her fence, it gurgled day and night, never once dropping an inch. That's when I realized my rising bill wasn't bad luck. Someone was siphoning water, and I had a pretty good idea who. Now, I'm not a revenge guy by nature. I've spent too many years fixing other people's messes to go starting my own. But I don't like bullies. And Linda? She was the kind who hid behind policy while bending it to her will. One afternoon, she caught me rolling my trash bin to the curb a little early. She pulled out a laser measurer, squinted, and said, "Bins must be precisely 12 inches from curb edge, section 7.1.4. I handed her a ruler and said, "Why don't you measure my patience while you're at it?" She fined me $50 and added my photo to the HOA's violation newsletter. Repeat offender. That's when I knew she wasn't going to stop, so I started planning. I paid a visit to my neighbor, Frank Myers, an older guy who'd lived there for over 20 years. Former HOA treasurer until, as he put it, Linda staged her little coup. He walked with a limp, wore socks with sandals, and had the kind of laugh that made you think he'd seen too much nonsense to care anymore. Over lemonade, he told me stories, how Linda had rigged votes, pushed out dissenters, even forged an irrigation exemption during county water restrictions so she could keep her pond running. She thinks she's queen of this cul-de-sac, he said, shaking his head. But every monarch falls eventually. I didn't know it yet, but those words would stick with me. That night, curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed a flashlight, crept to the shed out back, and lifted a warped floorboard I'd noticed earlier. Beneath it, half buried in dirt and cobwebs, was a metal hatch. I pried it open. Inside were 3 old iron valve handles, each stamped with faded city markings. My heart actually skipped. This wasn't junk, it was a working system. I gave one handle a cautious twist and heard a distant hiss, followed by the faint sputter of a sprinkler stopping mid-spin somewhere down the block. I tightened it back. Power hummed in my hand. After 35 years of turning wrenches for other people, I finally held control of something that mattered to me. Or maybe it was the idea of turning the tables for once. The next morning, I woke up to another bright orange notice taped to my door. Violations stacked like a grocery list. Grass too short, wrong light temperature, improper window cleaner residue. It was absurd. I didn't even bother taking it down. I left it there like a medal. When I went to the store later, one of Linda's teenage security patrols trailed me in a golf cart. Cameras glinted from street corners, lamp posts, even the community mailboxes. The whole place felt less like a neighborhood and more like a low-budget surveillance state. Smile? I muttered to myself. You're on Linda's camera. I decided to play dumb and watch. At night, I mapped out sprinkler cycles, noted water pressure dips, even measured soil moisture with an old sensor from my city days. Linda's property never faltered. Constant flow, steady pressure. One evening, Frank shuffled over from the mailbox, waving a folder. She's rerouting the south end hydrants again, he whispered. Claims it's for maintenance balancing. He slipped me a copy of last month's water budget, marked confidential. It showed a massive increase in volume routed to her zone. We might not be able to vote her out, he said, but we can outsmart her. And right then, I decided I would. I dug deeper into those old city records, found the original layout of the pressure grid beneath Pine Ridge. The main water line ran under my property before splitting into residential loops. The HOA had paved over the fail-safe vault decades ago, never realizing they left the control system intact under my shed. That meant Linda had unknowingly built her empire on top of my system. And she had no idea. A week later, she unveiled a new policy. Every homeowner now had to register their irrigation schedule and submit it for approval. She called it water fairness and sustainability. Everyone else called it what it was, control. People were grumbling, especially Mrs. Hall across the street. The HOA made her rip up her rose garden to meet drought compliance, while Linda's koi pond still bubbled away like a spa resort. Enough was enough. That night, I pulled on an old hoodie, slipped through the golf cart path behind her house, and crouched by her fence. Her backyard looked like a botanical exhibit, spotlights, a waterfall feeding into that pond, water trickling in a steady rhythm. I followed the sound to a small pump box marked Private HOA Maintenance. The pipe feeding into it wasn't city approved. It was siphoned. I took a picture and quietly headed home. The next morning, another letter waited for me. This time it wasn't a fine. It was a home inspection request for suspicious water usage. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my coffee. She was trying to get inside my house without a warrant. I sent her a response filled with enough legal jargon to make her head spin, citing sections of city code she'd never read. That bought me time. Then I set up a small digital flow meter on the old valve system under my shed. It linked to a tablet so I could monitor pressure in real time. Within a day, the data confirmed it. Linda's zone was getting more than twice the water allocation it should. She'd expanded her underground line with a retrofit fitting. Smart. Illegal. But not smarter than me. I waited until the timing was perfect, right before her big community brunch, the kind where she gave speeches about unity while handing out fines for unapproved bird feeders. While she passed out muffins, I twisted one of the secondary valves just enough to reduce pressure on her side of the loop. Not enough to cause damage, just enough to make her sprinkler system choke. By that afternoon, residents were complaining that their showers had turned to dribbles. Linda called 2 plumbers and filed a complaint with the city. I sat on my porch, sipping lemonade, watching the chaos unfold. That's when she came storming down the street, clipboard in hand, with her loyal sidekick, Stuart, the kind of man who smells like cologne and desperation. "Mr. Lawson," she snapped, "we're conducting a neighborhood water audit and will need access to your property." I tilted my head. Didn't realize the HOA was licensed for utility inspections. Her eyes narrowed. "Under Section 8.2, we reserve the right to inspect common property." "Right?" I said, "but this isn't common property. This system predates your HOA and falls under grandfathered municipal code. Would you like me to pull the zoning documents?" She froze, visibly recalculating, then spun on her heel and walked off without another word. Stuart tripped on the curb, trying to follow. I could feel it then, the cracks forming. The pressure, literal and political, was building. I wasn't just dealing with a bully anymore. I was dealing with a system built on lies. That night, I sent out an anonymous email to a few trusted neighbors, people who'd been fined, shamed, or just plain tired. I attached photos, documents, and a 10-year-old HOA meeting recording I'd found in the clubhouse archives. Linda's voice was clear as day. "Let's keep this between us." The residents wouldn't understand the complexities. Oh, we understood just fine now. By dawn, the entire neighborhood was buzzing, group chats lighting up, people swapping theories like wildfire. And right on schedule, at 6 a.m., I twisted the main valve just enough to cut off flow to 3 key spots: the clubhouse, the community sprinklers, and Linda's home. The silence was almost musical. No sprinklers, no bubbling pond, just stillness. I poured a glass of orange juice, stepped onto the porch, and watched confusion bloom like sunrise. Within hours, the HOA texted a community alert. "Please remain calm during temporary water pressure issues. Maintenance is underway." Signed, of course, Linda Carson, HOA president. She always signed like she was a brand. By noon, residents gathered around the clubhouse demanding answers. Linda stood there, pastel blazer and oversized sunglasses, pointing at landscaping maps like a general with no army. I walked Hank past her just in time to hear someone shout, "Then why does your koi pond still have water?" She stammered something about backup reserves. The crowd wasn't buying it. I gave her a polite nod as I walked by. She didn't return it. Later that day, another board member showed up at my door. Denise, quiet woman, always looked uncomfortable at those meetings. She smiled nervously. "Rick, you work for the city, right?" I nodded. "Would you happen to know why the clubhouse irrigation stopped this morning?" I shrugged. Old systems fail sometimes, especially when they're misused. She studied me for a moment, then asked softly, "Is Linda doing something she shouldn't be?" Instead of answering, I slid a flash drive across the table. "Just listen." That evening, the neighborhood reached its breaking point. The emails had spread. The audio, the documents, everything. People realized they'd been paying for Linda's private water paradise. And when she tried to fix it by sending out another emergency drought addendum, doubling fines and threatening inspections, it only made her look guiltier. I twisted the valve one last time, cutting her koi pond supply entirely. By morning, the water had dropped 6 inches. She called a plumber. He poked around for 20 minutes and left shaking his head. Linda started pacing her yard, yelling into her phone. Neighbors watched from windows. The queen had lost her crown, and everyone could see it. 2 days later, I sent everything, documents, recordings, flow data, to 3 city departments: zoning, waterworks, and residential oversight. I didn't even bother hiding my name this time. I just wrote, "Please investigate unauthorized rerouting under property lot 19. Bureaucracies may be slow, but when they smell liability, they move fast." The final act came on Saturday. The HOA had planned a community celebration, live band, food trucks, kids' games, the whole deal. But when people showed up, the grass was dead, the fountains dry, and the bathrooms shut down. Kids ran around confused while parents cursed under their breath. Linda tried to make a speech near the clubhouse steps, blaming city grid issues, when someone yelled, "Why does your koi pond still have water?" Silence. Then Frank stepped forward, old sandals and all, holding a manila folder. "I'd like to read a statement," he said. He calmly read out the financial discrepancies, the fake invoices, and the meeting transcript. He didn't yell. He didn't need to. Every word landed like a hammer. When he finished, someone shouted, "Vote." Then another. Hands went up, Almost all of them. Linda's didn't. Her face was pale as chalk. By the end of the day, she wasn't president anymore. The next week, her house became the talk of the street. Someone spray-painted water witch across her garage door. Flyers stuffed her mailbox. Her prized succulents were overturned. Nobody helped. Nobody cared. She tried to rally what was left of her board, but only 2 people showed, and both came just to watch the spectacle. One guy called out, "Hey Linda, what time's the koi pond funeral?" Laughter rippled through the street. That was the moment she realized it was over. The clipboard hung loose at her side like a relic from a bygone era. Later that day, she marched down to my house one last time. I opened the door before she could knock. Her voice cracked, somewhere between anger and desperation. "You've destroyed this community," she said. "You've weaponized lies." I leaned against the frame, calm. "No, Linda, you did that yourself. You built this place on stolen water and intimidation." I just let the truth flow. She looked around, maybe hoping someone would come to her rescue. No one did. "You don't understand what it takes to run a neighborhood," she said. I nodded. "You're right. That's why you shouldn't have done it alone." She didn't respond. She just turned, shoulders slumped, and walked away. Her heels clicked softer than before, like each step was an echo of everything she'd lost. A few nights later, Frank invited a handful of us over for what he called a quiet revolution. We sat in his backyard drinking iced tea while cicadas hummed. He proposed replacing the HOA with a resident council. No president, no unchecked power, just shared responsibility. People nodded, some even clapped. Someone joked we should call it the No Linda Charter. Everyone laughed. It felt good. For the first time, Pine Ridge didn't feel like a prison of fines. It felt like a neighborhood. The next day, I went out to the shed and opened the old valve chamber one final time. The metal was cool under my palms. I turned the handles slowly, restoring full flow to the community. The pipes rumbled back to life. I could almost hear the sprinklers sigh in relief. Fountains refilling, gardens drinking again. Not for Linda, for everyone else. The people who just wanted to water their lawns without fear. I sealed the hatch, locked it, and stood there a long time, listening to the faint hum under the soil. For 30 years, that system had been forgotten, abused, weaponized. Now, it was just water again, what it was always meant to be. Linda started packing soon after. Her koi pond dried completely, leaving behind a ring of white residue like a scar. One evening, I saw her standing there staring at it, her reflection faint in the cracked stones. She didn't look angry anymore, just tired. I thought about saying something, maybe even goodbye, but there's no satisfaction in gloating when the fight's already over. So I just nodded as I passed, and she didn't look up. Sometimes silence wins louder than words. A week later, Pine Ridge felt like a different world. No more warning emails, no patrol carts, no clipboards. People waved again. Kids biked without helmets the size of buckets. Dogs barked freely without citations. Someone even put up a flamingo in their yard, and nobody said a damn thing. The HOA bulletin board near the mailboxes had been repurposed, covered with handwritten notes. Free tomato seedlings. Need help fixing sprinklers? Thanks for standing up. Someone had written across the top in bold marker. No more fear. Just neighbors. When Linda's moving truck finally came, nobody gathered to watch. Nobody waved. She slipped out the same way she ruled, quietly, pretending it was her choice. That night, I stood on my porch, watching sprinklers dance across the lawns, water turned on again, water sparkling in the streetlights like a quiet symbol of balance restored. The lawns were green, not because of one person's control, but because everyone shared it now. For the first time since I moved there, Pine Ridge wasn't defined by fear or fines. It was defined by people who finally remembered how to be neighbors. And me? I didn't get any medals or parades. Just a simple envelope one morning, tucked into my fence slat. 6 words, handwritten. You were right. I was wrong. No signature, but I didn't need one. I folded it, slipped it into my pocket, and smiled. Because sometimes justice doesn't need applause. It just needs water to flow where it should. So, tell me, what would you have done? Would you have stood up to someone like Linda? Or just kept your head down and paid the fines? Drop your thoughts below. I really want to know. Where's the line between enforcing order and abusing power?